As per usual, you're probably wondering, Jacob, why does it take you so long to make videos? Yes, that's correct. Even though it's October of 2022, it's time for me to talk about my top games of 2020 and 2021. Hey, listen, we're just covering them in one video, you know? It's really what's happening here, what you're observing is just maximum efficiency. I've given it plenty of time for my opinions to marinate, and then I'm consolidating them into one video. You should be thanking me for waiting so long. Plus, I mean, really, how many exciting things have actually happened in gaming this year in 2022? I mean, what it really has gone down? I mean, like Elden Ring finally made Souls games a true mainstream success. So that happened. What else has happened? Team Fortress 2 finally killed Overwatch, finally defeated it, actually outlived it, so there's that. I think that's it. You know, I guess Pokemon Arceus came out this year, didn't it? It came out January, early this year, the first major formula shakeup for the Pokemon series in the, 24-something year history of the franchise. I don't know what year Red and Blue came out off the top of my head. Doesn't matter. And, you know, here's the thing, right? Because plenty of good games have come out this year, but I'm talking like, you know, things that are going to make people think, wow, the year 2022. That sure was a year for gaming. There hasn't been a lot of stuff. And Arceus is, I guess, historically significant. It's only historically significant if they keep making games like that, right? It's only historically significant if 10 years from now the Pokemon Company has further evolved on the formula of that Arceus game. For example, 10 years from now, if they're still making games in the style of Pokemon Legends Arceus, then somebody will have a conversation like, dude, remember when this kind of Pokemon game was new? Yeah, man. What was the first Pokemon game like this? Pokemon Arceus, dude. That was 2022, bro. Whoa. I feel old. That exact conversation is gonna happen between, there's some kids out there, like right now, who are like 13 or 14 years old. They're gonna have that exact conversation in the year 2032. And that's Believe It, Date.io. Some of you may recall that in past years, when I've done my top games of the year videos, I've used a lot of gameplay footage. I'm not doing that this year because that's a lot of work, and I've got a lot of games to cover because I'm covering 2 years, and nobody watched my previous videos of my favorite games of the year anyway. So why should I put the additional effort in the first place when I could just sit here and talk about it and edit in negligible, minor little bits of video game footage? Saves me a lot of time going out there and trying to collect footage. You may also recall, if you've watched my previous games of the year videos, that we've never done exactly a true top 10 list. The same goes this time around, because for 2020 and 2021, we are only going to be listing 8 games for each year. Frankly, I did play enough games that I could have filled a top 10 list for both years, but the games that would have filled the 9 and 10 slots each year, frankly, I don't feel they would have been deserving of even an honorable mention alongside some of these other games, so I'm just gonna keep it to 8 for each year. Plus, I mean, hey, that's 16 games. I still got a lot of video game to get through here. We're gonna try and do it in a relatively timely manner. You guys know me and how much I can talk about things. We'll see how that goes. First up, number 8 on the 2020 list is Fall Guys. I think most people kind of see Fall Guys as a sort of flash in the pan, 15 minutes of fame success, but, I don't care. It's still on my list because it was a legitimately fun and funny video game. Multiplayer games seem to almost exclusively focus in the realms of like shooters, racing games, etc. I love platforming games, and seeing somebody figure out a way to adapt platforming games to a competitive multiplayer, kind of environment, genre, whatever, battle royale-ism, the way that Fall Guys did, I thought that was actually really interesting, and I liked that the game was just enough, like, skill-based to feel like when you win, yes, I got that victory. And it's just enough luck-based and just clumsy enough that when you lose, you're still kind of having fun and it doesn't feel like it was entirely on you and you just want to jump back in and play another round. Too bad the game has apparently been ruined since then. Just a few days before I shot this, Save Fall Guys was trending on Twitter. Apparently they've implemented like skill-based matchmaking into it or something, and the rotations of game modes and I don't know. I don't know what's going on internally because I haven't played it in a while. The last time I did try to reinstall it, like a month or so ago, I thought, man, Fall Guys was fun. I should go back and play that. I downloaded it, I booted it up. It said that I needed an Epic Games account to log in. I deleted it. You guys let me know if they ever fix it, but until then, number 7. Despite its clumsy name, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is it's a legitimately fun time. It's got fun, Souls-light combat. It's got pretty fun Metroidvania exploration, platforming, ability, collection stuff. It's just an enjoyable video game. I don't know what to tell you. Good old-fashioned fun. In particular, I really enjoy the atmosphere of this game. I mean, it feels Star Wars-y enough, I guess, but it's not in your face. It's not obnoxious about its setting. It's not desperate to name drop things, to throw recognizable things at you. But other than that, I like that it's just kind of this, fun, distant science fiction fantasy setting. It almost feels like a Tomb Raider game set in the Star Wars universe. It's very enjoyable. This is a cozy little game to hang out with for a while. The story of Jedi Fallen Order is classic video game story, which is to say that it's kind of just garnish. It's not bad at all. Like, the script is not bad. The performances are all pretty good from the actors and also from an animation standpoint, but the narrative itself is just not all that interesting. If you actually try to string together like how many events happen in the game, you realize there is a lot of just kind of empty gameplay space between significant story beats. That's not bad at all. I'm just saying that the story itself is not really what draws me into this game. It's just something there to accentuate the larger experience. I will say, though, by the ending of the game, it feels like they've introduced a couple of more interesting threads and characters and stuff, and I am very keen to see what they do with the sequel. I'm hopeful that the story will be a little bit more interesting in the next game. If you want to see more of Jedi Fallen Order, wouldn't you know it, we did a playthrough of it over on our second channel, Research Runs, back when it came out. It took a little while for us to release it, as it does with everything. But hey, just saying, it's there. It's there if you're curious to see me. If you want to hear me talk more about this game, there's hours worth of it, so I'm gonna move on to number 6. Number 6 is Townscaper, which I imagine a lot of you have not heard of. Of all the games on this list, I'm gonna be putting in some footage of Townscaper to kind of give you guys a sense of what it is. It is a simple but surprisingly deep, I guess, model town builder. It's not really a city management game. It's not a sim. It's just an extremely easy to use but intriguingly dynamic Lego set. You build little houses and walkways between houses onto a basic grid. And you're not really selecting types of parts to put down. You're not selecting one type of building or another type of building. Everything is contextual based on how you put blocks next to one another, based on whether or not you box things in, whether or not you build a big singular structure, whether or not you build a lot of individual structures, whether or not you place things together can cause staircases to appear or cause a tower to appear. It's a very interesting, fun little toy to just spend time with. I mean, it really is, in some ways, a more toy than video game, but it is an extremely fun toy. Even relatively simple things enforce the fun factor on this. The art style is cute, the sound design, just of clicking and deleting stuff, feels very tactile and satisfying. If you only buy one game that I mention throughout this entire video, I seriously recommend make it Townscaper. It's cheap. There might be a phone version. I know it's at least on Steam. Please go and check out Townscaper. It is so much fun. It is a fun little stress relief thing to spend a couple of hours with every now and then. And fun little, easy to use, artistic expression, town building toy. Great little game. Excellent. Love Townscaper. Next up, we have the original Uncharted Drake's Fortune. I guess technically not the original. I still haven't played the PS3 version, and I guess I never will now because I have the remastered version, which is what I played back in 2020, because this list is about things that I played 2 years ago. Uncharted 1 is still full of some awkward jank, even in the remaster, but it is so effortlessly charming and fun that I just don't care. And I also think Uncharted 1 is pretty interesting to look at because it does some stuff that the other Uncharted games don't do for the most part, and something that everybody, they're always, the Uncharteds are just action movies adapted over to video games. It's doing something that even action movies can't really do, which is the continuous sequence of events over a long period of time. Because once Nate gets to the island after the first couple of introductory levels, there's never really a time skip, There's never really a jump in perspective. It is more or less one continuous series of events of this one very, very long day. It's honestly, it reminds me a lot of Half-Life. Obviously, in terms of gameplay style, not necessarily, but in terms of the feeling that you get of being sucked into this continual, spiraling sequence of events in a way that TV shows and movies don't really have the luxury of being able to communicate, but that when you are there playing it, can feel really special. Most of the other Uncharted games don't do that. One other Uncharted game does. Perhaps we'll talk about it later in this video. Uncharted Drake's Fortune is by no stretch of the imagination a life-changing game, but hey, I played it for the first time in 2020, and I still had a really good time with it. I enjoy it more than Uncharted 3. If you want to see more, you want to hear me talk about it even more, guess what? I also did a playthrough of that. So why am I wasting any time talking about it in this video when there's 10 hours worth of me talking about this game over on research runs? Moving on again. Number 4 on this list, I do not know how to talk about. In fact, I so don't know how to talk about it that I made a video back in the day about how difficult this game is to talk about. The game is 13 Sentinels. Now at the time, back in 2020, I watched a Let's Play of 13 Sentinels. I did not play it myself. I liked the game so much that I bought it just to support it. This copy, this has not left the box. It has not gone into my PS4 machine. I just bought it to financially support it. Now, like I said, discussing this game is a little bit difficult because it is a narrative-driven game which, even to discuss its basic premise, is to, in some ways, spoil what makes it so exciting, which is why the video that I made about it a while ago, a review of the game, it was a spoiler-free review. The joke was that it was barely 7 seconds long and I didn't say anything because you can't say anything about this game without spoiling it. In some ways, even the game's structure is a surprise, but that is number one, the most interesting thing about the game, in my personal opinion, its structure, and number two, the structure is pretty much the only thing I can talk about without spoiling specific events of the game. So I guess that's what I'm going to devote this segment to. Ultimately, I mean, the game's plot is good, but the plot isn't as interesting as the structure. The structure really elevates what's actually happening in the story. The way that it is told is what is so interesting and audacious about this game. If you are just generally interested with what can be achieved via non-linear storytelling in video games, what can be done in this form that can't be done elsewhere, 13 Sentinels, you must look into it if you're interested in that sort of thing. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, you owe it to yourself to experience even just the first quarter of the game, just to see the way that it interweaves multiple different perspectives, because the game has you jumping around between multiple different playable characters, and it will gate progress in one character or another character until you get a certain percentage complete of a collection of other characters or a specific other character. What it leads to is it does have some control over how it tells its story and the rate at which you get certain pieces of information, experience certain parts of the narrative. But two different players will wind up getting information at completely different points in time. And it's a very much a mystery game. So one person will get a really key piece of information 3 or 4 hours before another player gets a key piece of information. And those two players, because of when they get information and what it's next to, will wind up developing completely different ideas and understandings of what's going on inside the game. It's really interesting to see how this game weaves all of its different threads together into something that ultimately feels mostly cohesive. Now, it doesn't always work perfectly, because by letting you jump around within the narrative so much, it does mean that the game occasionally loses control over its own pacing in really detrimental ways. Like, you might be around the 90% mark of the story, getting really close to the ending, where most characters have gotten to the bottom of the mystery and know what's going on, and the stakes are really, really high, but there might be some kind of boring, slower parts that were meant to be experienced like 10 or 15 hours ago that you just didn't do, and you gotta go clean them up now. It's kind of a pacing killer. The game has some problems, but beyond that, I'm not gonna waste any time talking about them, because everything that the game attempts is so interesting that it really is worth looking at, and I think that it succeeds in most areas. 13 Sentinels, really interesting game. Definitely recommend looking into it. Even if you look into this cover and you see a lot of anime boys and girls, maybe you're thinking to yourself, I don't know. I still recommend trying to find a Let's Play and taking a look at this, because it is a very interesting piece of video game design. Number 3 on my list is a game that I haven't even finished, and I just don't care, because Gravity Rush is so much fun. Kat is such a likable, magnetic protagonist. The movement in the game is kind of janky and requires usually at least one more button press than really should be necessary for everything, but it doesn't matter because it is so fun and so different that you're like, whatever, I don't even care that this is a little bit awkward because I'm having so much fun playing this right now. It's got phenomenal music, it's got great art design, and it's got, I mean, in some ways the game you could argue is kind of sparse in terms of its design, but in some ways, I think that's kind of the charm, that it's an open world game, but it's not cluttered with your Ubisoft objective markers. It's kind of just a collectathon about, you know, dropping underneath a floating city and figuring out, I can walk on the underside of this building and there's a bunch of crystals to pick up. I started streaming this game in 2020, and then we had internet problems that prevented me from streaming for like a year, and then I did one more stream once I got our internet fixed, then I never got back around to it. Maybe I'll finish it! I teased this earlier, but I did a double feature of Uncharted games I had never played before in 2020. I finally got around to playing Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. It's actually funny that I wound up playing Lost Legacy and Drake's Fortune so close to one another for the first time, because Lost Legacy is kind of like a vague remake of Drake's Fortune. It's got a similar structure in that you have the first couple of levels establishing things, they're in another location, and then once those levels are finished and you get to the key location, the kind of jungle-y setting, I don't know why I said jungly, they're both just set in jungles. Once you get to the main setting, there's just a continuous, unbroken, real-time narrative that you're engaging with. And while Lost Legacy is not trying to be an emotional roller coaster like Uncharted 4 was, I feel like it hits a pretty good stride in terms of its game design, of kind of a middle of the road between that kind of lower key, naturalistic, real-time experience of the first Uncharted and the absolutely crazy bonkers set-piece stuff that Uncharted 3 is at the really far end of the spectrum on, because this game is, a lot of it, really low-key, shooting, puzzling, driving around, exploring, but it's also got a couple of the really high-level, impressive set pieces that I think a lot of people expect from the series, but it doesn't rely on them. It doesn't make them the key feature in the way that 3 and 2 kind of did. I don't mention 4, because even though 4 has a lot of complicated set pieces. Why am I talking about this? I'm gonna freaking, I'll talk about it later. I got another 9 games to talk about still. Lost Legacy doesn't oversaturate us with set pieces, but the ones that it has are good. It's got good puzzles, got good combat, a couple of ways that it kind of mixes up the formula from Uncharted 4, and it's also got a level that feels like it should have been there way earlier in the series. It's got that one kind of small open world treasure hunt level where you can kind of wander around and find all kinds of little hidden nooks and crannies to the world and solve puzzles and finish a little archaeological side objective, which really feels like it should have been in the games way before the epilogue spin-off game, but oh well, who am I? Who am I to say what they should do? Beggars can't be choosers. Why don't I just go and make my own Uncharted game, right? If I'm gonna complain so much. If, like me, you skipped out on Lost Legacy for a number of years, go check it out, you're missing out. I think it's one of the best games in the entire Uncharted series. Final Fantasy VII Remake. Number 1. I have far too much to say about this game to even attempt to fit into this little segment here. Suffice to say, I really love this game. Yes, I even love some of the stuff that you dislike, probably. I just think this is a pretty good game. I have very few complaints about it. The combat's a lot of fun, the character writing is really good, and the pacing, aside from a few snags, which are admittedly there, I think the pacing of this game is a lot better than some people give it credit for. This will not stun any of you, but I could talk about this game for hours, so I really shouldn't even let myself go into any detail here, because there's just no point. I mean, I don't know, I agree that Sephiroth is in the game too much. There's one part of this game, it's like 5 minutes long, that I hate. If I could change one thing about the game, it would be to get rid of this one part. None of you will guess the part that I am talking about. Perhaps I will talk about it at another date. For real, I mean, I would really like to talk about this game in more depth and detail at some point, but it is just so big. Talking about this game feels very daunting, but today is not that day. Now, that was the number one. Now you're thinking to yourself, that was number one. Ah, what a good top 8 list. But you're forgetting, this is a double feature. We've got a whole other 8 games and another year to talk about. You see how good it was to do both of these years at the same time? You just got to experience the entire excitement and roller coaster of a top 10 list, or a top 8 list, of all the way down to number one. You got all that excitement, and you got there and yes, the satisfaction of the comforting, clickable top 10 format. And now you get to do another one immediately after. You see? You should be thanking me for waiting so long. Number 8 for 2021 is Dungeon Encounters. This is a stripped down, bare essentials, very interesting little project. Dungeon Encounters looks and feels like a prototype, but its mechanical concerns are polished to a mirror shine by some of the masters of JRPG combat design. This is an active time battle turn-based RPG designed by Hiroyuki Ito, the guy who literally created the ATB system for Final Fantasy, and who has spent the last 15 years locked in the janitor's closet, I guess making this. There's some interesting numbers games driving how Dungeon Encounters works. This is a very high-stakes, dangerous, dungeon-crawling JRPG, but they do certain things to make it accessible while also keeping the tension really high. The game gives you essentially a defense health bar that will refill every single time that you leave an encounter, and then a real health bar, where if it hits 0, the character is knocked out. And refilling that one is much more difficult because you have very limited access to healing items and magical spells. But even if your character has a low HP, you don't necessarily have to abandon a run because that defense stat does refill before every single battle. So figuring out how to manage those two stats, how to try and prevent your character from taking real damage, and knowing when to actually, spend the resources to heal, and when to push it a little bit further and ride that defense bar as you push further into the dungeon, especially because leaving the dungeon can be very challenging. It's a really interestingly designed video game. If you are a weirdo like me, and that sounds at all interesting to you, I did a stream of it a while back over on Research Runs that you can go take a look at. I guess I'll make the card thing appear, which I'll also, I've mentioned a couple of things now that I've done streams or Let's Plays of. I guess cards and also links in description if anybody is interested in going and looking at any of those things, maybe after this video is over. This video is a list. I have another game to talk about. Number 7 for 2021 is Transistor from Supergiant Games. I did play Transistor back when it originally came out, but I did not beat it, and I decided in 2021 I should probably go back and replay and finish Transistor before I play Hades. Transistor's got a really fun combat system and a really interesting penalty for hitting 0 HP. You can hit 0 HP a couple of times in a battle before you actually die, but every time that you do, one of your abilities will be damaged and you can't use it again for a stretch of the game. This can put you in positions where you lose a couple of critical abilities and you're essentially boxed in and you can't wind up beating a fight. For example, you could lose 3 abilities and your 4th ability is some kind of support thing you can't even do damage with, and guess what? You're boxed in and you've lost that fight. But in terms of the overall game design of the whole experience, what it means is that you're constantly forced to change up your playstyle. You can't find one thing and really rely on a key set of moves. You will find old standbys that you'll return to, but it stops you from becoming locked into those styles of play, because you'll think, yes, these 4 moves, this is perfect, I'm gonna use this forever. And then you'll wind up losing 2 or 3 of them, and now you gotta remix things, you gotta reapply things, you gotta apply different abilities to support positions, different abilities to your primary move set. It's really interesting the way that it forces you to change up your playstyle as it goes on and keeps the game feeling fresh, keeps you feeling challenged the whole time you're playing. Also, great music and great atmosphere, but you kind of expect that from a Supergiant Games game, don't you? Speaking of Supergiant games, number 6 on my list is Hades. What's this, you may be saying? Everyone's game of the year for 2020 is only number 6 on Jacob's list of 2021? How can this be? Well, I hate to break it to you, but you're never gonna find out, because as far as I'm concerned, this game has been talked to death about. And I don't think that I can contribute anything new to the discourse. It's good. I like Hades a lot, obviously. It's in this list. Hey, listen, 6 ain't shabby. 6 ain't shabby. This is a really damn good game that I'm not gonna waste any more time talking about, because everybody and their mother has already made 5 videos about Hades 2 years ago. So we're just gonna move on, because I I'm talking about a lot of games in this video. I'm trying to keep this thing kind of manageable. So we're moving on. You're never gonna find out why I put it at 6. Number 5 on my 2020 list is the video game Splitgate. Splitgate is Halo 3 multiplayer, but every single player character has a little wrist-mounted portal gun that they can use at any time, and it just works like the portal gun from Portal, but everybody has the guns from Halo and the map design of Halo. What more do you want from me? Later Alligator is one of the funniest games I have played in a very long time. When you break down to its mechanical concerns, Later Alligator is basically like a collection of Flash mini-games you might have played on a website 15 years ago, but it's all strung together by this fun kind of point-and-click, explore a city, time management thing with this gorgeous, 2D art bringing the whole experience together. And like I said, it is a funny video game. The mini games are funny. The scripts surrounding the exploration of the city and the introductions of and accompanying the mini games sometimes are funny. This is a cute, funny, enjoyable video game. I'm showing footage of the game right now. Hopefully, I'm slapping it over this instead of showing you my face. I don't know why I need to be saying anything to you. If you are not immediately taken by what you are seeing, then there's no amount of selling that I am going to be able to do to you. But I will say one more thing. I will shoot one more shot. I said earlier that if there was only one game on these 2 lists that I want you to go and check out, it would be Townscaper. The number 2 spot of you must go and check this out is Later Alligator. It is a nice, bite-sized, digestible video game. You can play this in an afternoon and you will have more fun playing this than with anything else you've done in a little while. I guarantee it. Go check out Later Alligator. Number 3 on my list is Disney's, Marvel's, formerly Square Enix's, Eidos Montreal's The Guardians of the Galaxy. Now here we have a very focused, single-player, story-driven game with absolutely phenomenal art design. I hate that we have to, I think a lot of people rallied around this game at the time. I hate that we have to hold up these big, luxuriously made single-player games and go, yes, this is more of what we want, because they are kind of rare, it feels like, in the industry these days. The only, complaint that I have with Guardians of the Galaxy is that the combat isn't phenomenal. It's not bad, but it's just kind of filler. It's not terrible. It's enjoyable in fits and starts, but there are certainly points where you feel like, okay, wow, that should have been 2 waves of enemies instead of 7, because it was only fun for the first wave. Also, boy, is this a stealth next-gen game. Freaking Final Fantasy VII Remake is kind of a stealth PS5 game. Guardians of the Galaxy is not a stealth PS5 game. Most of the time while you're playing it, you go, oh yeah, I'm playing this video game and it looks fine. But every now and then, you hit certain areas on PS4. But hey, that's still likely preferable to playing the cloud version on Nintendo Switch. Funny enough, I did not actually get around to playing Psychonauts 2 in the year that it released, 2021. I didn't play it until earlier this year, 2022. But I did replay Psychonauts 1 in 2021. In fact, I replayed it myself, and then I also streamed it. And boy, is that game still good. A healthy dose of PS2 3D platformer jank cannot overcome charming art design, great characters, great writing, good soundtrack, and just boundless imagination. Even though you will wind up fighting with Psychonauts 1 every now and then, it is still so much fun and still so much more interesting than so much other stuff you're gonna play out there. It's honestly, I struggled for a little while over whether this was gonna go above or below Guardians of the Galaxy, because Guardians of the Galaxy is also a game with a heck of a lot of visual imagination. But what can I say? I really like 3D platformers. Speaking of... it's a Hat in Time. It's a Hat in Time. I played the A Hat in Time DLC in 2021, and it's my number one game of the year again. Those viewers among you possessive of elephant-esque memories may recall that A Hat in Time took the number one spot on my 2018 list, kind of by technicality back then. This time it's number one just by raw qualifications, man. The last 4 years have absolutely cemented that A Hat in Time is one of my favorite games of the last 10 years. And the DLC, which I played last year, only further solidified that this is one of my favorite games. There were 2 DLCs, I played both of them last year. The first one was Seal the Deal. The second was Yakuza Metro. You may be able to guess which of the 2 was my preferred, but I'll talk about Seal the Deal first. The core levels of the Seal the Deal DLC, the Arctic Cruise levels, are a little bit too wacky and frustrating, but I gotta say, one of the things that I like about A Hat in Time is how each of its different worlds in the base game are trying very different things, and even within those worlds, you'll occasionally get something really wacky and different, like the Vanessa's Mansion level. So I was absolutely down for something a little bit wacky and experimental with the Arctic Cruise levels. Yeah, they're not great, but I can say, and I do say this as a positive, not as like a backhanded compliment, I've never played anything quite like them in a 3D platformer before. The other half of the Seal the Deal DLC are the Death Wish hard mode challenges, which absolutely phenomenal. As a guy who obviously at this point I think I've demonstrated I really like A Hat in Time. I love the platforming of A Hat in Time. Having an excuse to dive back into that game and experience it from a different angle with a lot of new challenges was a lot of fun. Much appreciated. Some of those challenges are not great, some of them are a little bit insane, but most of them are a really fun, enjoyable way to kind of push the game even further. And they include a couple of brand new levels, a couple of time riff levels that, if I recall correctly, were actually done by members of the modding community. They're fan levels that were included in the DLC, and some of those levels are really, really good. But lo, Yakuza Metro. I think it's kind of interesting. If you look at kind of the sweep of A Hat in Time as a game, it was announced, I want to say in like 2013 or 2014, it was a Kickstarter game, and it was kind of a, hey, we haven't had a game like a Mario 64, a Mario Sunshine, a Banjo-Kazooie in quite some time. That was kind of what it was being pitched on. Then by the time that A Hat in Time actually came out, it was the same year that Yooka-Laylee released, not as good as A Hat in Time, and also that Mario Odyssey released, Mario finally coming back and doing kind of the thing that A Hat in Time was built on, hey, why doesn't Mario do this anymore? Now, it came out a few years beforehand, but it was very interesting for me to play Yakuza Metro pretty close to the release of Bowser's Fury, because they have very similar approaches. They are essentially one really big, continuous level. Yakuza Metro would probably be near the top of this list if it was a standalone game. That's how legitimately good that I think this is. It's one very large, elaborately interconnected level where you've got a central subway station that then has a ton of different ways in and out of it that lead off through the tunnels to different stations, to different levels, and the whole thing is this one big interconnected experience. And you're taking the already extremely good platforming of A Hat in Time and putting it into probably the best setting and the best level in the entire game for that platforming, with some of the best aesthetics and music of the entire game. Yakuza Metro is the best level of one of my favorite games already. I mean, look at me. I bought merch. I never buy merch for anything. I bought this tacky Yakuza Metro shirt. I bought the movie poster, Murder on the Owl Express, starring some girl. I bought this. What am I gonna do with it? I can't wear this anywhere. What is that? I'm not a furry. What was I thinking? Chicanery! I brought the furries into my own firm! Hi everybody. Hello, Frustrated Jacob here. Thank you for watching my video all the way to the end. I appreciate it. And just for you specifically, just a small treat, a quick channel update. You've probably noticed that after a good bit of activity last spring here on this channel's kind of been dead since then. A few quick light dustings of videos here and there, and even over on our second channel, Research Runs, where we do Let's Plays and streams and stuff. Things have been, we've put out a decent amount of stuff over the last year and a half or so. We put out a couple of Let's Plays, we've done some streams, we're having a good time, but it's been kind of slow. You see, I've been very busy, and finding a new balance of all of my life responsibilities and how to also manage YouTube has been challenging. But I feel where I am right now as I sit here on this sofa talking to you, I think I have found that equilibrium, and I think you can begin to expect at least a steady drip feed, if nothing else, of content here on Frustrated Jacob. And also, it's going to be slow for a little while I kind of get things moving here, but soon enough, research runs will also kind of be picking up the pace and moving along a little bit at a relatively, not a lot. I'm still not a YouTuber full time. I'm not gonna be able to do this all the time, but hopefully a nice steady flow, a nice steady comfortable flow of things for you guys to potentially watch, if you want to. I mean, if you don't want to, if you hear this and you say that's bad news, I don't know if you know this, on YouTube, you can where the little 3 dots are, kind of next to a video, you can click on that, there's a little drop-down menu, and you can actually say not interested. And you can tell YouTube, don't show me content like this, or from these people, or whatever. And most YouTubers at this point will be telling you to like, subscribe, comment, hit that bell. But not me, because I like to cover both sides. And I want you to know that you have the option of not only not watching my content, but not even being recommended my content. And I consider that to just be ethical, if nothing else. If you do stick around though, I'm working on a couple of bigger projects that you'll hopefully see in the relatively near future here on the main channel, and in the gaps between those bigger projects, you will likely find me here on this sofa a little bit more often, talking about all manner and variety of interesting subjects in the meantime. You probably will not find me trying to cover 16 video games in one go again anytime soon. But hey, I don't know, did it work this time? Did you have fun? Sound off in the comments if you thought this was too much. But in all seriousness, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for sticking around all the way until the end. I should be back fairly soon, and I'll see you next time.